the interesting thing about this woke phenomenon is that it spans across corporate America. You have so-called woke capitalism. You've got, ESG, with boards of directors and all these global nonprofits, the NGOs. You've got the think tank world. You've got the media. You've got Hollywood. It's a phenomenon that spans across virtually every major institution in our society. And so the question is, how does something like that happen? And I think it can only happen as a result of a shift in attitudes of an entire class of people, which in this case is the professional class, the class of people who have college degrees. And the polling data really bears this out. If you look at polling data on virtually any socio-cultural issue, the biggest divide in the country, it's not over, between race or gender. It's actually on the single variable of whether you have a college degree or not. So the political science has done a lot of work on this. Is Roy Tuchera. He's written many blogs about it. But basically, there's a 30-point gap roughly in voting patterns and political party affiliation based on whether you are professional class or working class. And professional class meaning you have at least one college degree, and working class means that you're high school educated but not a college degree. And this is the single biggest divide in the electorate, is that the attitudes and beliefs of people who have college degrees is just very different than those of the working class of the country. So how do you explain that? I mean, I think it's downstream of the fact that the universities got taken over a couple of generations ago by the far left. And so the quid pro quo of our civilization is that if you want the economic and social advancement that a college degree grants you, you have to go to one of these schools and you submit to voluntary re-education for 4 years. And I mean, you're basically indoctrinated in this ideology. I mean, it's the only way to explain why the people graduating the institutions come out with these far left views, which are just very different than the rest of the country. So I tend to think that's what's happening. And Andrew Sullivan has this line: "We all live on campus now." Yeah, we all live on campus because the campus is indoctrinated 2 generations of Americans, and now they have these views. Right. Now, it's not like every single person who goes to college believes in it. I tend to think that there's 3 groups. There's the true believers, who are maybe 10%, and then like maybe 1% rebel against it, and they become kind of either conservative journalists or founders, which is why I can stay in business with the views that I have. And then, like roughly 89-90% are sort of the herd. They tend to go populate the ranks of the professional elite. They go get the well-paying corporate jobs. It's the McKinsey consultants and the bankers at Goldman Sachs and so on. And then the true believers go do the low-paying professional jobs. It's the think tanks and the foundation world, and the HR, the HR police at corporations, the enforcers of the regime. And they staff the ranks of activist groups in the Democratic Party and things like that. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of how this works, and it's produced this broad phenomenon of all of our institutions going woke at the same time, because they all, all of our college graduates have kind of, again, breathed in this ideology, and they either support it or know not to oppose it. Just to finish the thought, I think that this explains a huge amount of the sense of conflict and division in our society, because just to go back to professional class versus working class, 2/3 of the country is working class. Only 1/3 of the country is professional class. So the professional class holds beliefs and values that are at odds with the working class, and they hold an ideology that is very different to, and it's hostile to, the beliefs of the working class in many cases. So you have a country, you have a democracy in which most of the people don't agree with the agenda that's being foisted on them by their institutions. And but the people running these institutions, again, they have a very different ideology. So I tend to think this is the fundamental disconnect. Now, the people running these institutions are always claiming that what they're doing is in the interest of democracy. But democracy is you let the majority of the population exercise its will and get its way. And that's not what's happening here. It's this Orwellian doublespeak where in the name of democracy, you're doing things like censoring one side of the debate, probably the side of the debate that has the numbers, has more support from most of the people. Certainly what you've seen is that, in the most recent election, we're very close to being it's a 50-50 country, but it's 50-50 with our big tech companies engaged in shadow banning and broad scale censorship and putting their thumb on the scale. And you have to wonder if we had a completely fair and level playing field, if big tech wasn't engaging in censorship on behalf of the sort of the elite, and the media wasn't constantly covering for the elite of which they're a part, you'd have to think that maybe these elections would go a little differently.